In the lush hills of the kingdom, where grand estates dotted the landscape, there lived a woman whose name was synonymous with wealth, wisdom, and grace, Lady Mavis Harrington. She was a woman who had seen much in her long life. Her fortune was vast, and her business empire stretched beyond the horizon, but wealth had never defined her. Her true wealth lay in the values she upheld: integrity, kindness, and humility. Though many envied her success, few knew the woman behind the empire. Lady Mavis had built her fortune from nothing. She came from humble beginnings, working her way up through sheer determination and an unshakable belief in fairness. Over the years, her family had become one of the most respected in the kingdom, and she was known far and wide not only for her business acumen but for her charitable endeavors. She had established schools, hospitals, and orphanages, always striving to make the world a better place for those in need. Her only child, Theo Harrington, had been raised with those same values. Lady Mavis had always been a devoted mother, teaching him the importance of hard work, compassion, and staying true to one's roots, despite the gilded world in which they lived. Theo had inherited his mother's sharp mind and open heart, but unlike his mother, he had always been fascinated by the allure of the social world, balls, galas, and fine dining. His youth had been filled with those distractions, and though he was aware of the responsibilities his name carried, he often seemed more interested in the pleasures that wealth afforded. Now, at the age of 28, Theo was a young man of extraordinary charm and intelligence. He had built his own business within the family's empire, and many considered him to be on the path to greatness. His mother was proud of his accomplishments, but as time went on, she grew concerned. Theo, in his pursuit of success, had yet to find a woman who matched the depth of his character. He had been engaged before, but those relationships had always ended in disappointment. When Theo announced that he had fallen in love with a young woman named Lady Serena, Lady Mavis's heart tightened. The name Serena was well known in high society. She was beautiful, graceful, and seemingly perfect in every way, but something about her didn't sit right with Mavis. Despite her outward charm, there was an air of calculation about Serena that made Lady Mavis wary. Serena was from a respected family, but one that had always relied on wealth and status to maintain its place in society. Her charm and poise were undeniable, and to the untrained eye, she seemed the ideal match for Theo. But Lady Mavis had seen many people like her, individuals who were drawn to wealth, status, and influence. Mavis knew that appearances could be deceiving, and she feared that Serena's interest in Theo was not based on love but rather on the opportunity to step into a life of luxury. Lady Serena had always been accustomed to the finer things in life. Her family had inherited wealth over generations, and though they were not as wealthy as the Harringtons, they maintained a significant position in high society. Serena had been raised with all the privileges that came with her status: a private tutor, elegant balls, and social gatherings where she had learned the art of conversation, diplomacy, and grace. When Theo had first shown interest in her, she had been flattered. She had heard of his family's fortune and was keenly aware of the opportunities his connection could bring. But what surprised her most was how easily Theo had fallen for her charm. His admiration was almost childlike, his devotion absolute. She had quickly realized that she could manipulate him with her beauty, and that the life of luxury she had always dreamed of was within her reach. At first, Serena had been delighted with the attention, basking in the adoration of her future fiancé. However, as the weeks went by and she spent more time with Theo's family, she began to notice things that gave her pause. Lady Mavis, the formidable matriarch of the Harrington family, was not someone to be easily impressed. Serena tried to win her over with her sweet demeanor and polished manners, but she could sense a coolness in Mavis's eyes, a wariness that she had not encountered before. Serena was used to people bending to her will, but with Mavis, she found herself constantly on guard. The matriarch's quiet strength and piercing gaze made her uncomfortable. Serena began to wonder whether Mavis might see through her carefully constructed persona, but she pushed the thought aside. After all, she was in love with Theo, and that should be enough. Lady Mavis had spent many sleepless nights thinking about how best to approach the situation. She did not want to alienate her son or make him feel as though she was interfering in his life, but her maternal instincts told her that she had to test Lady Serena's true nature. The woman she had raised her son to be deserved more than a shallow, self-interested partner. Lady Mavis had seen enough to know that there were people who would stop at nothing to marry into wealth, and she was not about to let that happen to her beloved son. After much contemplation, Lady Mavis devised a plan, one that would allow her to observe Serena's character without being noticed. She decided to disguise herself as a lowly maid and take up residence in the Harrington household under the false name of Miriam. No one would know who she truly was. She would live among them, serving her son and his fiancée, and watch how Serena treated the staff, how she acted when no one was watching. Lady Mavis knew that people often revealed their true nature when they thought no one was looking. By observing Serena's interactions with the household staff, she would be able to gauge whether the young woman was truly worthy of her son's love or whether she was just another opportunist. The transformation was thorough. Miriam, as Lady Mavis now called herself, was an elderly woman, with silver hair tucked neatly under a plain bonnet. She wore a simple gray dress, and her posture was hunched as though from years of labor. She moved quietly and efficiently, taking care of the daily tasks that were expected of a maid, cleaning, serving meals, and attending to the household's needs. Her presence was subtle, unnoticed at first. The servants, accustomed to working in the large household, paid her no mind. Serena, too, barely acknowledged Miriam at first. She assumed the elderly maid was just another staff member. But Lady Mavis observed everything, watching as Serena entered the grand dining room, her voice sweet as she spoke to Theo, but cold and dismissive when she spoke to the servants. Miriam, despite her role as a lowly maid, couldn't help but notice how Serena treated her. Though Serena's smile was bright when she greeted her future mother-in-law, there was something sharp and impatient about her tone when she gave orders to the servants. Lady Mavis knew she had made the right decision. She would let time reveal the truth. As the days passed, Miriam, Lady Mavis in disguise, settled into her role as a humble maid within the Harrington household. The grand estate, once a place of tranquility and lavish comfort, now felt different to her. There was an underlying tension that she could not ignore. Serena's behavior, though polite at first, began to reveal itself as shallow and insincere. It wasn't long before Lady Mavis started observing the more subtle details of Serena's character. While Theo was often away with business affairs, the moments when he was not around seemed to expose Serena's true nature. At first, it was nothing overt, small gestures, a tone of voice that carried a hint of arrogance, the way she seemed to expect the household staff to anticipate her every need. One morning, as Miriam was cleaning the grand staircase, she overheard a conversation between Serena and one of the footmen. Serena was discussing the upcoming wedding, a grand affair that she had planned with meticulous precision. But the words she spoke about her future marriage made Lady Mavis's heart sink. "I simply cannot wait to be married to Theo," Serena had said, her voice soft but edged with a sharpness that Miriam had noticed before. "Not that I care much for him, he's handsome, yes, but I've never been one for true romance. The money, the status, it's all far more appealing. What I will have at my disposal. My family will finally be at the top." Miriam paused mid-step, her heart heavy as she continued to listen. It was clear that Serena's interest in Theo was not born of love, but of ambition and the power that came with his family's name. Days turned into weeks, and Lady Mavis continued to watch from the shadows. She saw Serena's impatience grow as the wedding drew nearer, as though she couldn't wait to officially claim her place among the elite. Every time a servant made the slightest mistake, Serena's temper flared. She would snap at them, her words harsh and dismissive, as if they were mere tools to serve her whims. The way Serena treated Miriam, in particular, was telling. At first, there had been a facade of politeness. Serena would greet her with a forced smile and a cold, "Good morning, Miriam." But as time passed, the smile became rarer, replaced by an indifference that bordered on disdain. One evening, as Miriam was serving tea in the parlor, Serena turned to her with a sigh, clearly frustrated. "I do hope the wedding preparations are going smoothly, Miriam," she said, but the way she spoke had an undertone of impatience. "You've been dragging your feet with the linens. The silverware looks dull, how do you expect it to shine properly with such poor cleaning?" Miriam, in her quiet humility, simply nodded. "I'll make sure to do it to your liking, Lady Serena." But inside, she felt her heart sink. Serena had complained about the smallest details. Her focus was always on perfection, but only the perfection of outward appearances, never considering the hearts and souls of those who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make it all possible. Miriam's worst fears were coming to fruition. Serena's true character was slowly revealing itself to be one of entitlement, arrogance, and an insatiable desire for wealth and status. She had no care for others, only for what she could gain. Lady Mavis knew that if her son married Serena, he would be trapped in a relationship built on lies, and his love for her would eventually fade, replaced by resentment. But there was still more to witness. Miriam continued to observe, not just Serena's words, but her actions. It was during one of the household dinners that the tipping point came. It was a lavish evening. Theo had just returned from a business trip and was eager to enjoy a quiet dinner with his fiancée, the woman he hoped to spend the rest of his life with. Lady Mavis, as Miriam, was quietly setting the table in the corner, watching the scene unfold before her. Serena, dressed in an elegant gown, was seated at the head of the table, chatting animatedly with Theo. The conversation, while seemingly innocent, was revealing itself as a game of social manipulation. Serena spoke incessantly about the guests she had invited to their wedding, all with high titles and connections. She carefully mentioned the names of influential people, making sure Theo understood the magnitude of the event. It was all part of her carefully crafted plan to climb the social ladder. "Don't you think, darling, that it would be wonderful to have the Duke of Montcliffe there?" Serena was saying, as her eyes glinted with the excitement of securing another influential name on the guest list. "He's the key to so many connections. And the Countess of Lisle will bring such prestige to the event." Theo, unaware of the underlying calculations, nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, I've heard great things about both of them. I trust your judgment on the guest list, my love." Serena's smile widened at the praise. But as she turned her gaze to the maid, Miriam, something changed in her demeanor. She noticed the way the silver cutlery shimmered in the candlelight and the faint traces of fingerprints on the polished surfaces. "Miriam!" Serena called sharply, making the room fall silent. "These spoons are not shining as they should. I can't bear the sight of it. Fix it, immediately." Lady Mavis remained composed, keeping her face expressionless. "Of course, Lady Serena. I'll take care of it right away." But Serena wasn't finished. "And don't forget to iron the napkins properly this time. They look wrinkled. Do I need to show you how it's done?" Her words were condescending, as though she were speaking to a child. She barely paused to look at Miriam before returning to her conversation with Theo. Miriam quietly picked up the offending napkin, her heart heavy with the weight of Serena's words. The way Serena treated her, as if she were nothing more than an object, a tool to be discarded when no longer useful, was exactly what Lady Mavis had feared. The evening continued, but it was the final straw for Lady Mavis. Serena's vanity, her obsession with wealth, and her complete disregard for the people who served her were impossible to ignore. After the meal had ended and the guests had retired for the evening, Lady Mavis decided it was time to confront Serena. The truth needed to be exposed, and there was no more time to waste. Late that night, after Theo had gone to bed, Lady Mavis, still disguised as Miriam, called Serena into the study under the pretense of discussing some small matter. Serena, who had expected no more than a brief conversation, entered the room, her eyes narrowed in annoyance. "What is it, Miriam?" she asked impatiently, her voice dripping with the same entitlement that had begun to wear on Lady Mavis's nerves. Without warning, Lady Mavis stood tall, her disguise slipping as she revealed her true identity. The room seemed to grow colder as the transformation occurred. Her silver hair, once hidden beneath a bonnet, now shone brightly in the dim light of the study. Her regal posture straightened, and her eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked with Serena's. "Lady Serena," Lady Mavis said calmly, her voice steady but filled with quiet authority. "I have been watching you closely. And what I've seen has troubled me greatly." Serena froze, her eyes widening as she realized who she was speaking to. "I am Lady Mavis Harrington, and I have seen enough of your true character to know that you are not the woman my son deserves." The shock in Serena's face was unmistakable. You're Lady Mavis," she stammered, her mask of composure slipping for the first time. "But You have shown me," Lady Mavis continued, her tone now filled with quiet fury, "that your affection for my son is not rooted in love, but in ambition. You seek his wealth and his name, not his heart." Serena opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. Lady Mavis's gaze was unwavering. "You have no place in this family," she said, her voice final. "Theo deserves someone who will love him for who he is, not for what he has. I will not allow him to marry a woman who views him as nothing more than a stepping stone." Serena stood frozen, the weight of Lady Mavis's words crashing down on her like a wave. She had always been careful, calculating, and now, faced with the truth, her carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel. For a moment, she didn't know how to react. Her lips parted, but no words came. Lady Mavis, ever calm and composed, watched her with a steady gaze. "You may think you can fool people with your charm, Serena, but I have seen through it. You have no respect for those who serve you, no understanding of the true value of love. And worst of all, you see my son as nothing more than a means to an end." Serena, now scrambling to salvage her dignity, lifted her chin and let out a haughty laugh. "You're mistaken," she said, trying to regain her composure. "I love Theo with all my heart. I don't need to explain myself to you." But Lady Mavis could see the crack in her mask, the fear creeping into Serena's eyes as the reality of the situation sank in. "No, Serena. You don't love him. You've been playing a game, and it's about time someone called you out on it." Lady Mavis's voice was unwavering as she took a step forward, her presence commanding. Serena's face flushed with a mix of anger and humiliation, her hands trembling at her sides. "You can't do this. I'll tell Theo. He'll never believe you. I love him, and you're just trying to come between us." Lady Mavis shook her head slowly, her expression one of quiet sadness. "I don't want to come between you two. I want what's best for my son. And what's best for him is not a woman who sees him as a prize to be won, but someone who will cherish him for who he truly is." Serena's arrogance faltered, replaced by an ugly sense of realization. "What are you going to do? Expose me?" Her voice had become sharp, laced with a venomous edge. "You think Theo will believe you over me?" Lady Mavis remained calm. "I don't need to expose you, Serena. Your own actions have already done that." In that moment, the door to the study creaked open, and Theo entered, having overheard part of the conversation. His face was pale, his expression one of confusion and alarm as he looked between his mother and his fiancée. "Mom? What's going on?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Lady Mavis turned to him, her heart aching at the sight of her son caught in the middle of the confrontation. "Theo, you need to hear the truth. The woman you're about to marry does not love you for who you are. She sees you only for what you can offer her." Theo's gaze flickered to Serena, his eyes searching for the truth in her face. She was visibly shaken, her composure lost entirely. "Serena, is this true?" Serena opened her mouth to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. Her usual smooth lies had evaporated, and she was left standing in front of Theo and his mother, exposed. Her mind raced, but she couldn't think of a way to salvage the situation. I love you, Theo, she said finally, but her voice was weak, lacking the conviction that had once made her words so convincing. I do. I just wanted what was best for us, for our future. Theo looked at her, his eyes narrowing as he processed the situation. The false promises, the subtle manipulation, everything that had once seemed innocent and fleeting now appeared in sharp focus. You wanted what was best for you, Serena, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Not for us. Not for me. Serena's face twisted, and she took a step toward him. Theo, please, don't listen to her. She's trying to turn you against me. She's always been so controlling. You need to trust me. I love you. But Theo stepped back, his face hardening. No, Serena. I trusted you. I believed in you, but now I see the truth. This was never about love for you. It was about using me to climb higher in society. You're not the woman I thought you were. Lady Mavis, standing silently by his side, watched her son's heartbreak with a quiet sadness, but also a sense of relief. She knew that this was the right decision. It was painful, but it had to be done. Leave, Serena, Theo said, his voice stronger now, the clarity in his heart cutting through the fog of confusion that had surrounded him. I can't be with someone who doesn't see me for who I am. Serena's face turned a deep shade of crimson, and for a brief moment, she appeared as though she might fight him. But the weight of his words settled in, and the cold, calculating side of her took over. She turned on her heel, her dignity shattered, and strode out of the room, her steps echoing down the grand hall. As the door slammed shut behind her, a heavy silence fell over the room. Theo remained still for a moment, the shock of the confrontation still evident on his face. Lady Mavis stepped forward, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. Theo, I know this is hard. But you deserve to be with someone who loves you for you, not for your family's wealth or position. True love isn't about what you can give, but who you are together. Theo finally spoke, his voice strained with emotion. I can't believe I was so blind, Mom. I didn't want to see it. But now I know. I was so caught up in what I thought was love that I failed to see what really mattered. Lady Mavis gave him a soft smile, her heart swelling with pride for the man he had become. You'll find the right person, my dear. Someone who will cherish your heart, not your name. Theo looked up at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mom. I don't know what I would have done without you. Lady Mavis nodded, her eyes filled with warmth. You'll never have to find out. In the days that followed, word of the broken engagement spread quickly through high society. Serena's true nature had been exposed, and the people who once admired her for her charm and elegance now saw her for what she truly was, manipulative and calculating. The invitations to the wedding were quietly retracted, and the guests who had once shown interest in the event slowly began to distance themselves. Theo, though heartbroken, felt a sense of relief. He was no longer burdened by the weight of a false relationship. His mind was clear, and his heart, though scarred, was no longer deceived. Lady Mavis, in the meantime, watched her son with pride as he slowly healed. She knew that the pain of the broken engagement would take time to fade, but she had faith that Theo would emerge stronger and wiser from the experience. Months later, Theo met a young woman named Claire, someone who shared his values and loved him not for his wealth, but for his kindness, his intelligence, and the depth of his heart. They spent time getting to know each other, and soon, Theo realized that this was the kind of love he had always dreamed of, a love built on trust, respect, and mutual admiration.